Order. The first item of business is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review them? And I think there's one correction you want to make.
I'm going to make one change next to Katie's name on the list of attendees. Instead of alternate member, I'll change that to voting for absent members since Rusty was out.
Correct. Are there any other changes? Not hearing any. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Okay, next is our main agenda. Diane.
All right.
The RFP.
Yeah, the RFP. So everybody got a copy of this. Thought it'd be good to go through it briefly. I think sort of the main area to discuss is probably the schedule. But for the most part, I'll just run through the body of the RFP and just discuss what's included here. Let's see. So basically, introduce the project and discuss some background on the project, and to lay out some design guidelines as far as what we're looking for. The phasing of the work is laid out in a lot of detail, including all the different phases, the program development, schematic design, design development, construction documents, bidding, and construction administration. And then there's a itemized proposal response with 28 questions that we're asking that each applicant reply to. And then in addition, there is an attached fee proposal form to go along with those questions. So the format is somewhat similar from applicant to applicant. And then there's, as I said, there's an award schedule, which when I'm finished here, I'll go through in a little more detail. And then a discussion of how we're going to evaluate and select an architect, an engineer. And then a few details about the award of the agreement, and then the submittal requirements as far as how they actually submit the proposals. So with regard to that, we put my name down and my email for questions, and the plan would be that we would post on the building committee's web page any questions that are raised and answered. And then the proposals will be received here at Town Hall at First Selectman's office. And we're asking for 12 physical copies as well as an electronic copy of each proposal. And then attachments to this RFP would include the fee proposal form, which is at the end here, the educational specs, and the existing site survey. And that's something we should discuss as a committee, whether we feel that's appropriate for everyone to receive those documents as well. So I'll go back now to page 6, the RFP selection and award schedule. So I think it's important we go through that in detail and determine that those dates seem appropriate. So we selected, the big date is April 4th for the deadline of submissions, and that, assuming we come to an agreement on the RFP and by Tuesday of next week, have one put together and ready to go, we can submit it to the newspaper for printing next Thursday, which would give the architects and engineers 4 weeks to put their proposals together. So that's, again, we should discuss whether that's an adequate timeline. The closing date for questions would be a week prior to that on March 28th. And then let's see, give ourselves a week following receiving of those proposals to determine, to narrow down to a smaller group. Rusty and I talked this through. We thought it might make sense to start by narrowing the group to maybe 5 or 6 candidates, after which time we'd interview those candidates. And we'd give ourselves 2 weeks to go through that interview process and narrow down to maybe 2 or 3 finalist candidates. And again, this is Rusty's suggestion. I thought this was a nice idea to then put together a small fee for them and allow them to do some design work, those last 2 or 3 candidates, and come up with a presentation of ideas. I think that will give us the best idea of what it'll be like to work with each of those firms. And then from that time, so we would give them 1 week to put that together. That's a little tight. And then following that presentation, we would have 2 weeks from the May 2nd to May 16th date to select a finalist and then put together the award of agreement. So maybe we should open to discussion right now whether those dates seem realistic or based on everyone's experience.
The first question I would have, though, is that we'll talk later about the site plan upgrade by Redniss Mead, which we approved, and they talked about 4 to 6 weeks to finish their site plan. Will the architect need the upgraded site plan to do their proposals?
Well, we do have the
Existing
site plan, which I think can provide some information about the site. I don't think I pulled up this process for that site plan, but I think we could potentially make it available when we receive it on the website. Or if it's too late for it, then I think they could work with the existing site plan. I think it's just to give them a sense of the scope of the project. I think by looking at the site plan, it can start to tell what some of the challenges of the project will be.
Okay. I just wanted to pose that question because I know that's what the Redniss Mead came back with.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think they're not doing the final design of this proposal.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
No,
You're looking for concepts here.
Yeah. Good. I just want to make sure. And then your second question really is the distance between April 25th and May 2nd enough to really allow these firms to put together a presentation?
Maybe 1 extra week.
I think you need 2 weeks.
I'd give them 2 weeks. I think that would
You want them under pressure, remember?
No.
Related to that, you're just putting in they'll be paid a fee. Who's going to determine the fee? And is there a cap that we want to have on that fee, or do you want them to state in their proposal how much that fee would be? Because you could have one say, oh, it's going to be $25,000, and one says, no, 5.
But we didn't put it in there because we wanted to discuss it here, so it's not in there. They're not, all they're looking to do is cover their costs or part of their costs. A lot of these guys will do a lot of that work even without a fee. But if you really want them to focus in on it and put in some real good time, you maybe give them 10 grand a piece, something like that, and that's usually enough to motivate them.
So should you put that into the RFP, a fee not to exceed 10 grand, or do you think that will invite
Well,
10 grand?
it's a flat fee that we determine.
Okay.
Mike, what have you?
And I did one thing one time when we did a contest and the winning design guy got his
fee paid.
Got his cost covered.
Cost covered.
And the other guys didn't. But that, I got a lot of grumbling afterwards from the guy that came in second, believe me.
Didn't want to hear from you then.
So I agree that, what Kate's saying, that maybe we should list, in the thing, say that the 3 finalists will get, reimbursed to,
X.
design,
What is the X? 10?
Per.
Yeah.
Per.
10 per.
Not to exceed.
Well,
Not to
again,
exceed, right.
they're not, we're just going to decide what they're going to get, regardless of how much time and effort they put in.
Yeah.
Does that come out of a baseline, Rusty, from previous experience, or not really?
Not really.
But
The 10 covers a fair amount of time. I mean,
seems reasonable.
Fair being a reasonable amount of
Right.
time that they would normally put in.
I mean, one of the firms has a concept already drafted that that would be participating.
Right.
Well, they would then get reimbursed for their past work.
The other part of reason of doing this is, and stimulating these somehow, to really put some thought into this, we're going to catch a lot of good ideas from all 3 architects, 2 of whom are providing it gratis. And that helps.
Maybe it's not necessary to stipulate a number and just say that,
They're gonna ask.
these finalists, they're going to ask at this stage.
Yeah.
Well, because I was thinking you would broach that when you announce your finalists. At that point, you're talking to a smaller field, and you're like, listen, there's an understanding that there'll be some reimbursement for expenses here. So if you put it up front right now, 10 grand, like, okay, the number's going to be 10 grand, which maybe is the right thing, but doesn't really give you any flexibility later on.
I also don't think we want to narrow it down to 3. We may find there's one person and we don't need to go through that process. We might find there are 4. I'm not sure that's the case, or we might find there are 2. So I also think we need to be careful about limiting the number of finalists.
Dr. Elliott?
As well.
All right, your hand up.
Have you done this before? Fees on the Public Works building or the high school or Middlesex?
We already had, we didn't do this kind of a process with the Public Works Garage, no.
So we haven't done fees in the past?
I don't recall.
We did it in the middle
something
school.
like
They did at the middle school,
Yep, we did.
and it wasn't the architect that designed the building.
Well, we had that first architect that got a fee up front for really conceptual stuff. But
Fletcher.
when we got down to the final 3, we did pay a little fee to each of the, now my memory is a little foggy, 2, 3 people.
Anybody remember how much the fee was?
Somewhere between 5 and 10, and that was ancient. I mean,
That was a while ago.
a
That's in the
few years ago.
mid-90s.
23.
I know when they did Tokenie School, they had an architect work with the concept of a new school, rebuilding the old school, and coming up with that plan. And that firm was paid, I don't know what they were paid. And then they went through the process of hiring an architect to design the building.
Yeah. Middle school was the same exact way.
And I don't know what the high school was. I think it was a longer process at the high school. I think it was years.
I don't think they had the preliminary
I don't think we
architect.
had a preliminary.
Hmm?
I don't think we had a preliminary.
Not at the high school. No, I don't think so.
Well, is 10 a reasonable number? You're saying
Or we
shouldn't
can
do
leave it
now?
empty.
I was just saying,
Or you can make it part of the fee page, that they tell us what it would cost them to do, if they're selected as finalists, what they would charge us. That does take some decisions out of your hands.
Okay.
Right. Although I do think it should be something we determine and a flat rate for each architect.
They would.
And it's not going to really necessarily meet their costs. I think it's to show a little something on our
that
part.
this isn't a waste of your time.
It also sets a tone that, hey, look, we get it, that we're asking you to do a lot of work, and we're trying to be fair. We understand you want to at least cover your costs, and kind of here it is.
Could you leave it just as it says in the RFP now?
Just
pay the
fee.
fee, and then when you choose those
Right.
2 or 3.
We'll tell them what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
We can
That gives you the
explain that a
flexibility,
little
yeah.
bit more thoroughly in the proposal evaluation section. We already state there that we discussed the interviews very briefly. We could probably make that a little bit more clear as to what our intentions are.
Is it your expectation that in the first round, when everyone's submitting, that you'll be given conceptual concepts? Just like high level, and if not, is that something that we want to explicitly ask for at this stage? Because at this point, you're probably just going to get your stock response of like, here's my number or whatever, and then you're probably going to discard however. How many do we think we're going to? Do we have that determined
Well,
yet?
again, this is made public, so it depends.
Oh.
So we can
Really?
have a
You can
large
Get
number.
tons of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
And then
okay.
So you sit there with an inbox here and a trash barrel here.
Got it. Because I just think it'd be great to see the full extent of ideas.
I think that's where the narrowing to the smaller group
Yeah,
comes
sure.
in. And
Okay.
maybe even, I would think in the interview process, they're going to show up with some ideas to be able to talk
Okay,
about
so
the
you think
specific
that will
project.
happen? Okay.
I think so.
So if we change the May 2nd to May 9th, are we also moving the May 16th date, or are we shortening that?
That's a good question. I would think in terms of determining the finalist after the presentations, 1 week is plenty of time, but I'm not sure what is involved in the award of agreement, whether there's more time is needed.
Well, you referred to attaching a standard contract.
Yeah.
Right.
I
AIA
need to
or?
see that, and I think, during the process, we can run that by Wayne. Actually, usually it'll be Patty Gowd. We can run that by our attorney. The only issues will be if they want something different. And there's any negotiation that has to go back and forth. Because we'll be setting up a contract that is what we want.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I meant to ask the question on that, and on page 7 at the bottom, we talk about the award of the agreement. You mentioned these different contracts, but has somebody already reviewed those, or those for Wayne to review?
I haven't seen them, so, I'm sure Patty is very familiar with them because she's done those kind of contracts.
Okay.
But
We could also leave it out, and unless there's a comfort level for an architect in leaving it in. I mean, there's standard forms of agreements, AIA forms.
Yeah.
Importantly, there it says modified by Darien.
By Darien, yeah.
Right.
Once we start on this, we're going to need a number of weeks to actually take the standard one. Now, it's at the AIA, American Institute of Architects, so it's written in such a way, if you've ever read these, to favor the architects
Right.
big time. We need to determine what the relationship between the construction manager and the architect is, and who's doing what, particularly in construction administration and all that stuff. So it will be a revised type.
Yeah.
But we could do that and have it ready, vote on it, have it ready, and then once the architect's, boom.
So within that, do we think 1 week is reasonable amount of time? Again, I think selection could be almost immediate upon presentation. That's a question of whether 1 week's an adequate amount of time to negotiate a contract.
To negotiate the contract and to get all that, I'd give it 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because nothing ever happens fast when you're talking about contracts and lawyers. I mean, it's one thing to award, it's another thing to award and execute it.
Yeah.
Okay?
So then if May 23rd is the date that we're looking to award and execute the contract, how does that?
30th. Right.
Well,
Would you just
for
add
the-
another week?
From the 16th
1
to
week.
the 23rd, right?
23rd, okay.
So it's May 9th for the finalists, May 23rd.
Right. As long as all the other
If every-
dates going
Yeah.
forward stand as well.
Right.
Anybody is-
So
I'm
how
sorry,
does,
Katie.
how does that date of May 23rd then impact us getting the next processes through the town to try to meet that June 30th deadline?
We're never going to meet on June 30th.
Yeah,
Never, never going to
That's
meet it.
completely off the table.
Yeah.
So then how are we thinking about the current landscape of, the comments from the governor about bonding?
That's for the next discussion, which
Okay.
hopefully will be enlightened by Duke having gone
Okay.
through all that. I mean, it's exactly the question.
Right, that's just, it's so
It's exactly
present
the
on my
question.
mind, yeah, really affects the timing.
It does, tremendously.
I had one question. Did you want to have something in here if the architects want to go look at Oxford School? Did you want to give them a time, a couple-week time frame that if they want, make an appointment,
So a site visit
get a
almost.
site visit, individually? They don't want to go like, contractors go look at, putting a roof on a building.
Right.
I think architects like coming separate and walking around.
And do we think that
Why
might
do you want them to look at Oxford?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
For
Well,
the,
just
that
get a
makes
lay
sense
of the
for the
land,
site, but I don't
you
think
know,
there's any value in the building.
They gotta use their imagination, their creativity. And
I think you gotta see
Let
the
us
site.
take it aerial.
I-
Not the
I think for the second, I think the semifinalists, I think there might be an option of giving them the
Yeah.
ability to come and see the site for their final presentation. But I think to offer that up to the entire group might be a
That's true.
little generous.
Yeah,
Especially
no, I
since
was
it's
bringing it
open
up
season.
because, they're going to ask.
Yes.
But if they're.
So
if
what's
they're-
the answer going to be? I don't want to say the wrong thing. I want to,
Go to Google Earth.
Exactly.
You can also drive there on a Saturday or Sunday and walk the property.
As long as everybody gets told the same thing.
Yeah,
I
you
think that's
can, you
the
can
purpose
move
of
it
providing-
around and,
I think that's the purpose of providing the site plan as well, to give them
Yeah.
some information.
I'll find out if the map geo is open to the public, because we do have a place where you can go look at a piece of property, you can get all the flood zone information, topography. I'll ask Jeremy.
Okay.
Because that might be a good place to send them if that's available to them.
But you don't want everyone who's submitting on the first round going through the school site. I mean, that would be just...
Half of them will be there to plug their own company with whomever brings them around.
Yeah. Okay. Is there...
Been through this.
I just noted that on page 4, there's a list of permits and approvals. And Randy, I think you had mentioned you'd be very interested in being involved in that. I just wanted to sort of, will you take the lead in that area, please?
Sure.
And Mike also should be involved because he lives right next door to the school. Okay. Are there any other questions about the draft?
Hey, Diane, on page 1, and maybe it's more for the administration too, it says construction of a new K through 12 school. It's really K through 5.
Oh, yes, that is, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pre-K 5.
And yeah,
Pre-K. Good point.
Okay. Of course.
I also noticed on the bottom of that page, Diane,
Yes.
we had changed September, September
August.
to August in both of those years.
Oh, right. Mhm.
On the original document.
And I tried to leave it a bit open-ended as far as the state grant approval, not fully
Right.
knowing where we stand with
Because
that
we don't know
regard to
where we
that.
stand. That's the problem.
Can I ask another question? If, can we ask them to give us 3D models of what they're thinking of? It seems to be pretty easy today with those printers, for example, that do hard copies. You have computers that do computer-assisted design. I'm just wondering, I think it's best for the committee to see a 3D model to get a real feel.
The new versions of CAD, which they use to draw, are now 3D, so that you can, on a flat screen, actually walk the building and see it. And that's kind of been replacing the 3D models. They're expensive. Now, if we feel it's necessary for getting approvals, and if heaven help us, if there's an referendum, maybe, but those are pretty expensive. But if you see these new the CADs, it's really...
Well, I think for the purpose of the design of the building, I certainly think that some 3D representation is critical. And that's actually in the list of what's asked of the architects. That we're asking for exterior perspectives, which is a 3D drawing. But as far as the applicants go, I mean, I would think that that's up to the finalists to decide if that's the proper representation. My guess is a site plan study would be more the scope of presentation for that purpose, rather than trying to show 3D images at that point. So then I think it's important again to look back at the schedule as far as whether we think 4 weeks is the right amount of time from posting in the newspaper on Thursday to receipt, or whether that's too much time. I mean,
Well, actually, you'd have, 3 weeks, wouldn't it? Because
No, before.
4 from Thursday.
We do 7th to 14, 21, 24.
So 28th is the date when the submission of questions is due.
Okay, the questions, right.
April
right.
4th is when
It's
the
the
actual
questions. Yep, okay.
proposals are due.
Sorry.
They're pretty standard
Yep.
presentations. That should be
I think for
plenty.
the
Okay.
initial round,
Yeah.
especially.
What, 4 weeks?
I think it's being generous.
I was gonna
Plenty
say,
of-
I mean, is it too much time? I don't think
One thing that we still have to put in here is the insurance language for what our standard requirements are. That's just a boilerplate that will be attached to it.
Okay.
And I will go through it one more time and check things like capitalization and stuff. My Kip Koons is it.
No, don't say that. Is everybody happy with the changes so far?
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve this?
Motion.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Nice job.
Nice job, Diane. And your work will just continue.
It's only just begun.
All right, Duke, please carry us through.
At a high level, to your point, June 30th is the deadline. That just does not seem reasonable or feasible with what's required in terms of the process just going through the town. There is a bill out there that the governor has proposed. That bill would extend the date for submission for grants and applications to September. If that were to go through, that would help us by almost probably a year in terms of the whole process of getting this built. It is just a bill going through the process. A couple of highlights on that note is Town or Regional Building Committee must include one member who has experience in the construction industry. Allows for reimbursement rates to go down now as low as 5%. And of course, with all the conversation about regionalization, the bill at a high level incentivizes a regional school building, which is not something that we're looking at or want to do. It also increases the rate of reimbursement when a new elementary school includes a readiness program. The change in this bill compared to how it works right now is if this were to go through, the grant process would move a little faster because you're allowed to proceed with a lot of the soft costs prior to the grant decision. And again, in order to submit, you need proof of full municipal funding for the project. So while it's informative, I think it's a long way off. And I think it's, but we'll monitor it. With that said, Tara, the chair of the Board of Ed, and I have spoken a bunch, and she's also been in touch with Senator Duff, and he has offered to help walk us through the administrative process of applying and going through the grant process. So we're hoping to do some follow-up with him as to what that actually would look like and how he could actually help us with that process.
Duke, what is the bill called?
Here it is, right here.
Yeah.
Senate Bill 874. I will email it to everyone on the committee for your fun reading.
Thank you.
It's only one of 5,000 bills.
And does the readiness caveat, does our ELP program meet those requirements? Okay.
Yeah, the other thing about it, and I'll just give you a caution, on line 699, it says, unfortunately, and I was reading this hoping to hear what Duke just mentioned. We had until September 1 rather than July 1 or June 30th, and that as we continued getting our approvals, we could have our thing in front of the state. However, there's modification language that basically says, and this is the language, provided an application for a school building project determined by the Commissioner of Education to be a project that will assist the state in meeting the goals of the 2008 stipulation and order for Milo Sheff et al. Versus William A. O'Neill et al. As extended, or the goals of the 2013 stipulation for the same, then you have all these rights. I have no idea whether our application will in any way meet those provisos. So some lawyer's got to tell us. I mean, it's really...
What do they pertain to?
The litigation in the state of Connecticut concerning unequal education. Okay. Am I correct on that?
Got it, yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Got it.
Okay. And I mean, you need, like I said, you need a lawyer to even interpret what the proviso is.
So we'll follow the bill as closely as possible, and then we're going to work with Senator Duff to see exactly what his offer means. It's still an incredibly tight timeline, and I don't know if there's any wiggle room in terms of showing the process we're making as we go through.
How much does it really matter anyway? You're going to go through the process anyway, right?
Well,
it's not like we should, or is there a cost from our end of like submitting all this document where you would say, if I don't have a shot, I'm not even going to try?
Well,
is that what we're trying to assess here, or?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what you're trying, because if they've lowered first of all, they've lowered the bar to as low as 5% of qualified educational spending costs, and certain things are excluded. Have fun reading the bill, that'll give you a whole list of exclusions. Then you have to decide based upon, they use this formula of the grand list equalized by blah, blah, blah. And basically, you can be certain that we're not at the top of the list, we're at the bottom of the list by virtue of our grand list equalization formula. And people are asking for that to be changed, but they haven't changed it yet. Thus, would we be even in the 5%?
Sure.
And if so, what is that? What's the cost to get there? And that's what we have to weigh.
And what's the cost of delaying?
It'll be clearly, given what we know right now, probably a 1-year delay. And what's the good of that? So you have to, but if someone said it's worth $5 million to the town, I would hard pressed to say, well,
explore it.
Don't worry about that. Okay.
So how do we start that evaluation process?
We're relying on the
But I
Board
think
of Ed.
the last meeting, we back of the envelope at a number like $7 million, I think.
We did a typical thing that Kate mentioned, that previously our total costs were reimbursed to the extent of
14% of the
total project.
Oh, of
Because
total,
Our
okay.
rate was 20%
That
of
included.
eligible costs, and they always throw, there are things we know are going to be thrown out, and then they always throw.
Bonding costs,
Right, and then we
insurance.
threw a $50 million number on, just for planning.
And so-
Your max was 7, and what we're saying now is they're chopping away at that.
Yes.
So you know you're not going to be anything better than 7. It's going to,
Well, and he's already
Okay.
put a freeze on almost all bonding, so.
The question
other
was,
than-
you even get it yet?
are you going to get it? Yeah.
So it's a whole bunch of moving targets, and you got to sort of try to keep your eye on all of them. But it's still, I think we should still proceed as rapidly
Yeah,
as
sure.
possible,
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Would it also be possible, I know we talked about this in a previous meeting about the different steps that it takes to go through the town process of a certain number of weeks and, with a different town body. Is it possible to get an outline of that, just so that we have a clear view of,
Well, I think that you provided something last time before John said we can use the
Right.
Board of Finance
It's-
contingency fund.
What we want to do is do the bidding first, so that we get a guaranteed maximum price. Then we go to seek approval. So the approvals have to go through the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the RTM. How many weeks it takes kind of depends on their schedule. But, figure like if we were trying to go to the April 2019 meeting, we'd have to be to the rules meeting. It's, I think, the first week in April. So basically, the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance have to act the month before. So kind of figure 6 weeks from when the Board of Selectmen acts to when the RTM would act.
okay.
Then you have to wait another 10 days after the RTM acts to allow for a referendum period. So anything they do, any appropriation that they make over $50,000, and it certainly would be over 50, is not official until 10 days have passed from their action.
But the point of what happened last time, when John Zagrodzky said that all of these soft costs we're going to take out of the contingency
Right.
fund, means we don't do any of that stuff. The Board of
For the
Finance.
early money.
For the early money.
Right, for the early, yes,
Right.
but
But
for
when
the
we go to
final
ask for
project.
the final project.
Yeah.
And we're a
Is that-
long way from that.
No, I know. I just liked, I think it's helpful, though, to know what we have ahead of us.
Right, but if we have to have a commitment to the state for the full funding, we're a little bit longer than you think if we want to follow the process of bidding first and getting that guaranteed maximum price.
Yep.
Yeah, I just think it would be helpful to have those clear dates because there are so many different bodies and moving parts and dates.
Yeah, and it depends on the time of year.
Right.
The RTM typically does not meet in July and August. So they have to call a special meeting.
when you said a year delay, what was that in reference to? Is that meaning if you don't meet the September or June 30th date, then it could, you basically,
Your next submission date is July.
That's what you were
July 1st
referring
of
to?
next year. That's
but
correct.
couldn't we move independently of that and not let that whole process delay us, and that's just kind of like a
Not if you want state
sidebar?
money.
But not if you want state money.
You negate the state money?
Yeah, literally.
Why? You're just doing more planning and spending of your own capital. It doesn't make any sense.
They
Because
don't-
they're not, because
Oh, they're not in the room.
they're not approving it.
Right.
Oh.
To move forward, for them to do the bonding, for them to do, then again reimburse us the funds.
What do they actually have to approve? We have to wait until they've approved the architectural plans or designs?
The ed specs, the overall cost.
Okay.
They have to approve the process too.
Right.
Make sure all the
Gotcha.
resolutions have been passed, and
So we have to be
Done all of our
basically all the way
steps.
through the RTM, have our funding in place, everything, and then we sit and wait for the state.
Well, I would like to say too that I think that we
Process.
definitely need to consider this because I think that a scenario of not receiving any town funding and delaying by a year is a lose-lose situation for us. And the people paying the price of that are going to be the current students that are going to school in a failing building.
That's correct, and that's why we're trying to accelerate it. But we don't know yet. And then, again, with all these proposals and bills out there, it's very hard to figure it out.
And I'm sorry, just to clarify, it's the point, so we would go through the design process and have a complete package, a design package. That's the point at which we would have to stop. It would be before any construction work, before hiring of a,
It would be
Of a-
actually before your construction drawings.
before
Right.
construction drawings.
Before.
Because that's real money, right?
That's real money.
Yeah.
How do we then, can we use the process of going out to bid and getting the guaranteed maximum price before we get the state approval?
No,
But we can't get the state approval if we don't have the local funding in place.
that's right. So you basically go to the RTM with an estimate. Worse than
An estimate with
That's-
contingencies.
yeah.
With three levels of contingencies. You've got a design contingency, you've got a construction contingency, and you've got your soft cost, the town contingency. And when the construction drawings are done, if I'm right on this, Rusty, the design contingency goes away.
Correct.
You're left just left with your construction and your soft cost. I mean, it's not the best place to go, and that's what we did not do in the garage thing.
No, we knew what we were paying, but
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like we're going to have that option. with
If
this
we
school.
want to get state
If we
funding.
want to get
Right.
state funding.
Yeah.
Did you
That's-
get any reimbursement on the garage?
No.
From the state? No.
They don't do that.
Not for those type of buildings?
No.
No, schools are the only things that they'll
Right.
give us money for.
But Kate, does the RTM need to know what the state funded portion is to deduct that?
No, because
for-
what
for
we'll take to
approval?
the RTM, it'll be helpful to tell them what we estimate the state funding would be, so what the net to the town would be. But the RTM is going to have to approve the full cost,
Without the.
the gross
portion.
costs.
Okay.
So, if we use the number we were talking about, like, Tokenique, I think, was about 27 million, right? So we approved $27 million, even though the state was going to give us back 20% of the eligible costs on that. So we have to have the authorization for the gross,
Full.
yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Duke. Come back anytime. I've asked Rusty to talk about expandability and flexibility in school design because it was something that was mentioned last time by John Zagrodsky, and we talked about it. And your answer.
Okay. Let me just pass this out for a minute. It's just a brief little thing. What this is this is a quick outline of what an architect does. And this is just the first few phases of what they do. And I've highlighted on there flexibility and expandability. So that is something that needs to be taken into consideration during design. As far as the middle school, this is a summary of the concept, the program that we used. And I'm going to point out these three spots here. And it says classroom space for 900, core area for 1,200, master plan for classroom expansion to 1,200. By the way, where this comes from, we put together a whole brochure on the middle school, everything from the cost to the schematics to all this stuff for two uses. One is for approvals by the various boards and the RTM. Secondly, we got hit with a referendum. So it was really a Q&A so people would know and we would address the issues ahead of time. So this was built into the middle school. What triggered it is the Board of Ed came up in the specification and said, we want to build to 900. We said, okay, that may be good for a few years, but we threw it back at them and said, okay, we need you to look at it again. In your wildest imagination, what would the growth be? And they came up with this chart. 900 is right here. We were back here. And they came up with a high and a low growth for the potential student population. And it went as high on the high end here to about 1,300. So So what we did, we had 3 layers of expandability. These are the concept drawings. One is that we went with the larger size classroom. So, they give you a range of the number of kids in the classroom. We built it to the bigger size. You're not talking a lot of square footage. Say you went from 20 to 22. We built for 22 even though 20 was needed, which means you've got 2 extra seats in the room that you could add if you needed them, times, I don't remember how many, 40 classrooms. So you have 80 built in just to the size of the classrooms. The second thing we did is we put team rooms in the middle school. They were not essential, but they also would serve as a backup should the growth take place that is much higher than anticipated. We have 6, 2 on each floor, and in fact that's what's happened, is that they've taken the classrooms, which can hold 22 or 23, I'm not sure what the number is now, and so you're able to get times 20, times, 120, 130 additional spaces without building anything. Now you'll notice on the schematic drawing right here, that's a new wing. It's 3 stories high, three classrooms on each side of the corridor. So there are 18 extra classrooms that could potentially be added to the middle school. And the reason that it appears on this drawing is this is where you stub out all of the utilities so that you can put a slab down, put this thing up, crank it in. And this was able to hold an additional 300 and change. So we had 3 levels of expandability depending on where it was headed. The core facilities, again, this is out of that booklet I told you about, the Q&A booklet. Core facilities to be utilized when the school is open for session. So we made the core facilities, which you can't expand once you build them. The auditoriums, the gymnasiums, that technology center, that stuff. We made that to fit 1,200. Is it a little overbuilt for 900? Yes. Did it work out? Yeah, because I think, what are you, 1125 in the school? So it's right on target right now. And so that's how we handled the expandability without costing the town a ton of money, basically. This is where that wing is right off the back here. Second thing is the flexibility of use of the facility that we need to consider. And what we did is, here's all the fields and stuff here, is that we put all of the facilities that can be used by other members of the community, whether it's weekends, summers, or whatever, all in the same space right here and accessible while locking off the rest of the school. So you've got your cafeteria here, you've got your 2 gymnasiums here, you've got your library here, and you have your auditorium here, which can be scheduled for use by the town or whomever without interfering with the security of the field. So that flexibility is, we think, very, very, very important. Just on a related issue, value engineering. And it's related because it can kill you in the cost. And just so you know, there's a difference between value engineering and cost cutting. Quality is remembered long after the price is forgotten, right? That's an old saying. And too many of these projects are focused too much on cost savings and not long-term quality. And when I mean quality, not just materials and stuff, but you don't want to have to go back in and rebuild or fix. In your case, you don't want to have the maintenance high. So you want to do things that you spend a little more and get a little more, or you spend a little less, but it doesn't influence the quality of the school. And I think this is kind of a general concept that we ought to be thinking about when we are doing the design and specifications, think long-term, think high quality. And, but you can do cost reduction that is appropriate, but too many times it is not. And the other thing, again, that's related to this, sorry, I'm going a little out of this space. Now, what was it? There was a third item. I don't remember.
Good.
Time's up? Okay. Anyhow, I wish John was here. I'll talk to John directly on this type of stuff.
So with your question or the point that you were making about the middle school, how it was 900 and you built it to 1,200, do we have those numbers in the current ed specs in order to say like what the numbers are that we're planning for, or is this part that we will be developing?
This is what we'll have to be going. We'll go back to the Board of Ed and say, okay, in your wildest dreams.
But that's how the ed specs were built,
Okay.
based on the enrollment projections that
Okay.
Mike Feeney does and that an outside firm has done.
Okay, so
And
those numbers
the
are-
ed specs in general have included, each time Mike and the administration have done them, have included all the additional projects that are going on in town. So,
You're talking about like housing developments
Correct.
and things that could
Correct.
increase enrollment? Okay.
yep.
And
Those are built in line with the administration's philosophy of what number of children should be in a classroom and our enrollment projections
Okay.
with growth.
With
Isn't there
growth.
a report we're waiting on current enrollment projections? I thought there was, am I misunderstanding?
It's
I
not
thought
every
we-
year.
There's, we do our own, it was recently just updated by Malone and McBrone.
Okay.
So
Does that
it's
change?
done.
Okay.
Yeah, the challenge has been, there's always been this conversation about value engineering, and the schools weren't built for the right size based on the enrollment. If you look at the enrollment projections, we've been really good on the enrollment projections. It's just the schools haven't been built to the right size because of value engineering.
Right.
It hasn't been that the enrollment projections have been off. It's how the schools have been built. So.
And as you said, the current ed specs reflect the current projections, so it's nothing we need to concern ourselves with. It's already built into the ed
Including
specs.
ELP.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Duke, do you have any schedule for possible school visits?
So Dr. Elliott has proposed one date here. We might have to get a few others. March 7th, which is Thursday, anywhere from 4 to 5 o'clock. We could tour Tokenique and Oxridge. See how many people that date works for, and then we might have to go back.
Kate, will that be a meeting?
Depends on how many of you go.
No, if more than,
If more than a quorum is going, it's a meeting.
Yeah.
So,
so we have to post it and all that?
yeah. I mean, it's a
But
pretty
it's not
simple
open,
posting.
it's not open to the public. Oh, no, come on, we're going to go to tour.
Any meeting has to be open to the public.
Lord.
What kind of attendance you'll get from the public,
Because we went to,
And I'm not sure
the
what the
building
schools can
store, it's the
do
same
to-
public meeting.
Okay,
So,
all
It's
right.
okay, I can sneak you in.
Yeah. we don't have to talk to each other.
Yeah.
stagger your arrivals or something.
Okay, so right now it's the 7th of March.
7th of March, we can start as early as 4.
That doesn't work for me.
Does not?
Not great for me.
But couldn't individual members schedule their own, if you can't all make?
Yeah.
Isn't there a
We're
benefit to
groups
being
of 3.
together?
Well, let's start with the 7th, and
Yeah.
if there's another date to add to that.
Why don't you all say
Respond.
yay or nay to me, and then Kip and I will talk about how many people we have, and if we need a second one for a smaller group, we'll go that path.
Okay,
I can
that's
make it
good.
work.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
good for me.
Good,
All right.
great.
Gets me out of work.
That's the way to look at it.
I'm looking at the weekend, get me out of the house.
And then I've been back and forth with Dr. Elliott. He's organizing a list of schools in the area that we can potentially reach out to. The one I looked at, and I wrote down the architect, but I didn't bring my book, was the elementary school they did in Newtown. There was quite a write-up on that when I was Googling new schools in Connecticut and stuff like that. Probably a little different circumstance in terms of how that was built and a lot that was incorporated into it, but it was a really neat architect, and the whole concept of what they did and what they were trying to do was fascinating when I read the article.
Great.
So.
I made up a quick list of schools. I have I have Sandy Hook, but I didn't put down the architect or construction management firm who's there, but I could do it if this list looks palatable. I mean, Bridgeport has a Fairchild Wheeler Vocational School. It's got quite a lot of energy efficiency design concepts built into it, even though it's a high school.
Right.
That opened in 2014. Greenwich Public Schools, they just opened a new elementary school last week. New Lebanon Elementary. That was Newtown Sandy Hook Elementary opened in 2016. Fairfield Public Schools had McKinley Elementary in 03, Burr Elementary in 04, and then we've got Tokenique and Oxridge for 09 and 65. So a lot of the districts around here, New Canaan, Ridgefield, Stamford, Danbury, they don't have any new school buildings. It's kind of hard to find.
What about that one over by Chelsea Piers? Was it called Rogers or something like that?
It's an old school.
Is it
that
really?
was renovated as new.
Oh, it was renovated, because I thought it has a lot of like sustainable features to it.
There was a lot of renovate as new and put additions on.
Wow.
There was an awful lot of that in the last 15 years.
Mike, who did Sachs Middle School at New Canaan, do you know?
The auditorium addition?
No, the classroom.
JCJ.
That was JCJ. It was classroom auditorium last
Yeah.
couple of years. That was JCJ, the people that did the middle school.
Could you circulate that? I apologize, I knew you were working on that. Could you circulate that list or forward it to Kip and myself? Okay.
Yeah, I'll put the architects and construction management firms on it.
Thank you.
And then,
So right now, all we have to respond to right this moment is the 7th of March.
Correct.
And everyone get back to do them.
And we'll look at that list and then we can organize that.
Great.
If you want to look at a high school, Staples High School is really a brand-new building, maybe 5 years old. What the architect did was design a new building, and as they moved along, they destroyed parts of the old building, so the kids were in school the whole time.
Really?
But I think that's a building worth looking at.
Okay, put it on your list. Okay. All right, to our next item, which is the Redniss Mead site survey update. You've all had hopefully a chance to look at that. Again, I had asked my question originally about whether it'll push out the RFP for architect. The answer is no. Does anybody have any questions or comments concerning this particular proposal?
Has the zoning body, had a chance to look at it or something? We should probably have the experts that govern the...
Here's the expert.
Redniss Mead does a lot of the surveys that the town, when the town is asking for a survey, they do it.
Okay, so
they know what they're doing and they're working.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, just did they send out the request for the price or whatever?
No, I talked to George.
Okay, you got it covered, it sounds like.
Yeah.
They probably looked at the...
So I don't want it to show up and then the different bodies in town say, oh, well, you forgot to mark, this, clearly these guys know what they're doing.
They do work for the town all the time.
Yeah.
And you're going to find that...
That's happened to me before, but
Oh, okay.
personally, in this town. Yeah.
And didn't they do the original?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
going to be updated
Yep.
from
Yep.
their
Yep.
own.
Right.
Okay.
Any more comments, questions? Can I have a motion to approve this particular proposal?
Motion to
From Duke, second? Second from Diane, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is a motion, a proposed resolution that I'm putting forward really as a sort of guardrails for us. In past building committees, there has been sometimes a disagreement and the ability under the Freedom of Information rules to make additions to an agenda, add items to the agenda, only requires 2/3 of those present. In which case, if we were down to our minimum, which would be 4 for a quorum, that would be 3 people could add an item to a regular only a regular meeting. However, voting on that item, I'm suggesting should be 5. And the reason for that is I wanted to retain the flexibility. If something comes up between meetings, hey, we've got to approve something that just came in, we can. With 5 people saying we can vote on that, we can add it to the agenda and we can vote on it. If 5 people say we agree to vote on it, we can move it through. But if it is an item that, for example, is controversial, I would like to have a larger group be ready to say we'll vote on it. That would be at least 5 members. And that's why this resolution is being proposed. So this will govern, if we pass this, this will govern how we're going to govern ourselves in making additional items to an agenda of a regular meeting only.
What's the difference between a regular and a special meeting?
To be a regular meeting, it has to have been posted at least 30 days in advance.
To be a regular meeting?
Right. In a special meeting, you can post 24 hours in advance, but per FOI regulations, when you post that agenda, you can only do what is on the agenda.
Right.
So you cannot add items to the agenda.
So this is really just applicable to things that are added to an agenda.
Only to things that are added to an agenda to a regular meeting. In other words, you can't change this, but you can't add things to a special meeting.
Right.
Which we're under right now because we're still in the formative stage.
And that's over the course of the meeting itself, is adding to the agenda.
Correct.
While in attendance.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to have the flexibility that like something comes up and we want to approve it. It came up, after the meeting was scheduled, but we didn't put it on the agenda, and we all agreed we want to get it done. We don't want to wait for another whole meeting to get it, put it on. We can vote on it, but I don't want it to have to be something that, we only have 4 people here and 3 say, yeah, I'll put it on and we'll vote on it. Because it could be something that's controversial and we'd like to have a broader representation. That's the only reason we're putting it on here.
Is this procedure that's been followed with prior committees?
Well, I'm adding it here so that it doesn't happen. So in other words, what's happened in the past
I
has
think the
been
answer is no.
constant.
I don't think we've had this procedure, but
based on experience, it seems to be.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I
Based
mean,
on participating in other meetings where stuff comes up and gets tabled, and I think knowing we have a sense of urgency around what we're doing,
Right.
I think it makes total sense.
I mean, as long as there's 5 people here, we
Right.
could do it.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we only have 4, I prefer not to have 3 people, run something through. That's all.
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, so I'm going to propose this resolution, and I make a motion to adopt it. Second by Duke. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there anything else to discuss this morning?
Can I bring you back to the RFP briefly?
To the which?
The RFP. I was looking at one of the pages and noted page 5, it asks to list and describe K-12 projects. Should we say pre-K to 12 projects?
Pre-K to 5.
Pre-K to 5.
Pre-K to
Well,
5.
this is what we want them to tell us projects they've done before, so I didn't think the 12 mattered, but I thought the pre-K might matter.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, and the first selectman had suggested at your last meeting that we require them to show us some that have been here for a while.
I mean, older.
Right, so right now we're just saying, give us the dates of completion, but should we specifically state, include ones that are at least 5 years old?
Is 5 old enough? Or do you want
About 10.
about 10 years?
You'd say 10, that gives you a
Project,
good idea of where and
10 years maybe.
Good call.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Anything else you wanted to add?
No, that's, sorry. I wish I had seen that previously.
I wanted just to mention before, and I'll get right to you, Katie, just a second, that we've been approached, John Zagrodsky has been approached by Chris Cycley of Construction Solutions Group, who have expertise in grant requests and submissions to the state. Don't know anything about them. I'll have them, I'm going to have that person call you.
Sure.
Okay? And then CBRE Project Management Group, Nick Rongo, has contacted me. He's contacted, I guess, Jamie before, concerning project management for this entire project. He's unique in the fact that he is a Darien resident. He has a daughter at Oxridge, and his wife is a teacher at Oxridge. The trifecta. So we will.
He's too close to it.
We will at least.
It's called All in the Family.
So I've given Rusty a copy of the proposal, or his, and we're going to talk about it. We'll probably meet with him just to let you know that that's going on. Okay. I also. Final thing is going. We do need a traffic study. It's been determined by Jeremy, and if I can ask you, Randy, to pursue getting a traffic study person. Jeremy has some good ideas about that. He was suggesting that since this is on a state road, we don't have to do the usual stuff around town. We need somebody who's familiar with state approvals. But talk to Jeremy, if you would, about that.
Is that something we've got to RFP, or is it just, it's like a Redniss and Mead type assignment?
It's a
We don't have
Redniss and
to
Mead.
RFP.
Okay.
Mike Lynch could help.
Mike Lynch? Yeah.
Mike.
Okay, yeah.
Jeremy felt that because it was on the state road, we are going to need to get state approvals. It should not be a big deal because we're not changing the nature of the use of the property. We won't be changing the volume of the use of the property tremendously. So it should be pretty easy, but he expected that the state would ask for it, so.
And I will get out to everybody how to get to the website where all of our information is. And I think we ought to make sure the public knows about that so they can go there rather than bothering us.
It's not hard.
I know.
That was one thing that I wanted to bring up, is if we had a plan for public update, something, even just letting, I mean, this week alone, I've had multiple people approach me asking what's going on with the building. So I do think, especially in the Oxridge community, that there is, a lot of curiosity. I think it would be great if we could just let them know that we are working on it.
So I do give a public update at each Board of Ed meeting.
Okay.
So maybe this is something that we can then work with the Board of Ed and the Oxridge PTO just to put some small statement out that says what's going on and where they can look for continual updates.
Especially where, because
So
between the videos, between the website,
Right.
and between the meetings, the minutes
warning.
and agendas.
Right.
Right.
I totally understand. I just think that it would be a nice gesture to the community to sort of say,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
here's where you can stay updated, here's who you can contact.
So I'll organize with Tara for the next Board of Ed update and have specifics about the website, the meetings, the video, and just reinforce that with everyone.
Yeah, and we can put things on social media.
Sure.
As well.
Okay.
Great, so
Good.
if you could loop me into that, I'd be happy to
Absolutely.
get that out to our
Yeah.
PTO.
Great.
Good. Excellent.
Yep.
Is there any other business?
Next meeting.
The problem with the next meeting, it might well be determined by our visits. So I think we should wait to see how the visit, how many people sign up for the visit, whether we have a meeting there or whether we'll schedule another one. So it's up in the air right now.
So once I go through the people that are coming, then I'll get back to you on if we need to warn a meeting, and then we'll set that.
Perfect.
Okay.
What do we want to accomplish between now and then? RFP's out?
RFP's out. You're going to talk with Jeremy,
study.
traffic study.
And I'm going to work with Tara and Senator Duff on potential, what help means in terms of the grant process, and then we'll also speak to the person. I'll reach out to that person that's offered their services.
You find out whether it's worthwhile.
Exactly.
And I'm going to send everybody Senate bill, Governor's bill, whatever it is, 847, and I'll direct you to the appropriate 10 pages to read, and maybe you can decipher it for us.
Okay.
But I mean, there was a lot of homework there to do. Okay?
I'm also going to start on the CM search.
Oh, really? Nice.
One question on that. We talked about in the RFP, there's going to be someone commissioning person. Is that the same commissioning person that would do the mechanicals for the school? Mechanical systems?
It's usually an independent.
Yeah.
But they would be involved with the mechanical engineer and the construction manager through the design and build.
Okay. Yeah.
But they're not the designer or the builder.
Right.
Yeah, I think we just refer to the fact that they'd have to work with the commissioning agent.
Okay.
I do have a draft of RFP for construction manager. I based it on one we've used in the past, and the town had used for the DPW to give to Rusty.
Yep, I can quickly go like this.
I know he's the man.
He's the man. Any other
Can
business?
you tell that to my wife?
I know,
She wouldn't listen.
She knows better.
Hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?